Good morning, and welcome to Sunday Seminary with Memphis Theological Seminary. I'm Carmichael Crutchfield. I'm the professor of Christian education, spiritual formation, and youth ministry at Memphis Theological Seminary, and I'm delighted to be with you today. As part of today, you can use the question and answer feature with this webinar, as well as the chat feature with this webinar. With that, I'm going to sort of jump in, and I'm going to jump in with prayer. I'm very delighted to be here and to be a part of Sunday Seminary. Let us pray. Dear God, we're grateful for today and for the opportunity that this day brings to us, and the privilege of being able to use this venue to teach and learn and to grow in you. We ask now your guidance and direction as always as we go forward in this moment of teaching and learning. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Well, I'm going to share a screen and start our discussion today. Once I share this screen, and hopefully all things go well here. Let's see. Let me see. Ooh, I want to share that screen. I'm going to stop that share. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. A second here. There. Here we go. Here we go. Today and next week, we're going to talk about faith formation in 21st century. And today I'm going to be using a lot of the work, much of the work of John Roberto, as he talks about faith formation in the 21st century. I will probably be using some of that next week as well, but this week I am going to be talking about that. And let's see. Yeah. This is where I want to begin. So where I want to start with that song today as I think about faith and I think about um, what faith has done for me in my life and how I ask the question often of people, how do you get by without faith in your life? How do you make things happen in your life without faith? Um, and oops, I'm trying to get this screen out of here now. That's the faith I need right now. To get the screen. It doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, here we go.
There is a huge fundraising deadline coming up for Senate Democrats, and they need your help right now if they're going to meet it.
I'm asking you to please donate now to help flip the Senate. Okay. We need to flip just 4 seats in order to take back the Senate this November.
Nate Silver's 538 confirms that Democrats can flip the Senate, but Mitch McConnell is outraising Democrats right now.
We urgently need grassroots supporters like
that out of there. We're not talking about that today. Lord have mercy. Got a lot of different screens going on here. Here we go. This is where we are. Play from the current slide. The definition of Christian faith formation. It begins with gaining a grasp on the meaning of faith. We speak of faith as a gift and as what we believe and whom we trust. It is in that hymn that I hear this faith and this belief. Christian faith formation involves communion and relationships. Later, I will say more about relationships, communion, and how these particular things are part of what faith formation is about. During the majority of my ordained life, I've been a member of 1 or 2 small groups that have meant much to my life and faith formation. These groups have been sources of authentic relationships, communion, and meaning. And this comes from, I must give this plug for the book. This comes from a book that will be released hopefully soon in October, The Formation of a People, Christian Education in the African American Church, authored by yours truly. And I talk about faith formation from that vantage point, in this particular vantage point in that book, from an African American standpoint. But faith formation is not limited to in any ethnic group or any particular group. I teach about faith formation, Christian faith formation, because it is a grasping and gaining a grasp on the meaning of faith and what faith means. Oftentimes, and all of us, many of us, and most of us, if not all of us, have faced life's tragedies, life's issues in life, death, sickness. And I have just been amazed at how the faith that has been formed in me has informed my life in those times, in times of trouble, when real trouble comes in my life. And so, but this comes over a lifelong process. And so the end game for me is to make disciples. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. And this, of course, is Matthew 28:19-20, often referred to as the Great Commission. And the reason I call this my end game is that everything I do in ministry, whether it be teaching Christian education at the seminary, or preaching in a church, or pastoring a church, or being an executive in the CME church, everything that I do revolves around this idea that we've been called to make disciples of all nations, and baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. And in the midst of that, to remember that Jesus is with us in all of that. So I raised these questions in these two sessions that we will have together. These three questions come to mind for me. What could faith formation look like throughout the 21st century? And how can congregations provide vibrant faith formation to address all ages and meeting spiritual needs? And how can churches design initiatives proactively? In order to look at this and to take a very good look at this, we need to ask the question, we need to take the long view. So the day-to-day work of most churches is driven by, near-term concerns and 1 to 2 to 3 year horizons. However, in reality, most strategic choices, from new projects to new leadership, are choices that will play out a long way into the future. Taking the long view offers a more proactive and anticipatory approach to address the forces affecting church life, to see both challenges and opportunities more clearly, and to consider the long-term effects and potential unintended consequences of actions that a church might take. So first, I say, when we start to ask these questions and try to address these questions that are before us, we need to take the long view. And then we need to think, not only taking a long view, but we need to think from the outside in. What do you mean by that? Like other organizations, most churches are surprised by discontinuous events because they spend their time thinking about what they are most familiar with in their own congregation. They think from the inside, the things that control, but out to this world in which they operate. Conversely, those things we control that work towards to the outside of this world, but conversely, thinking from the outside in begins with pondering external, social, technological, environmental, economic, religious, and political shifts, changes that might over time profoundly affect the community and church, creating new risk and opportunities in the process. For example, and I mentioned this in the book that I just mentioned, The Formation of the People, is that John Westerhoff, longtime religious educator, helped me to understand and helps us to understand that there are things that are happening around us, and that many times in many of our situations, I know in my own denomination, I can't speak for anyone else, but in my own denomination, much of what we do in Sunday church school probably revolves around a worldview of technology and social and environmental and economic and religious and political things that were taking place more in the 1950s than they are taking place in the 21st century. And as a result of that, we are struggling in our denomination with Sunday church school, because I believe we've been looking inside in too much and not enough outside in. And so this causes us to become stagnated and sometimes not only stagnated, also finding ourselves declining. And then the third thing, we not only need to take the long view and think from the outside in, we also need to embrace multiple perspectives. Ultimately, the point is to look at things from a larger vantage point, from faith formation priorities, programming strategy, innovation, to visioning and leadership. In every context, thinking improves upon the ability to make better decisions today and in the future. So it causes us sometimes to take what John Roberto calls scenario thinking. Thinking that taking different scenarios, and in his book and on faith formation in the 21st century, he uses 4 different scenarios. I'm not going to get into those because it would take a little bit too long to really flesh out in the session. but I'm going to sort of hint at them and jump at them in one way or another. There are some significant driving forces that we have to consider when we start thinking about faith formation in the future or in the 21st century. One is the declining number of Christians and growing number of people with no religious affiliation. The population of the United States continues to show signs of becoming less religious. For instance, in 2008, 15 to 16% of Americans claimed no religious affiliation, and that nearly doubled the 1990 figure of about 30% or 32%. Among Americans ages 18 to 29, 1 in 4 say they are not currently affiliated with any particular religion. The number of American adults identified as Christians dropped from 10% from 86% in 1990 to 76% in 2008. So this is one of the significant driving forces, is that the declining number of Christians and growing number of people with no religious affiliation. A second driving force as we think about faith formation in the 21st century is the increasing number of people becoming more spiritual and less religious. A small but growing minority of the United States population describes themselves as spiritual but not religious, meaning not connected to organized religion. 9% of Americans were spiritual but not religious in 1998, but they're rising to 14% in 2008. And then 18% of 18 to 39-year-olds say they are spiritual but not religious, compared to only 11% a decade ago. So this is a second thing, increasing number of people becoming more spiritual and less religious. And then the third thing, significant driving force, is the declining participants in Christian churches. By measure of participation, such as worship attendance, marriages and baptisms in the church, and child and youth participation in faith formation programming, the trend is toward declining participation in church life in mainline Protestant and Catholic churches. None of this is probably surprising to any of us, because we're living it and experiencing it ourselves. Among young Hispanics, immigrants attend church services more regularly than do the native-born second and third generation Hispanics. Combined with the trend towards fewer Christians and the growing numbers of religiously unaffiliated, it appears that succeeding generations of Christians are less likely to be exposed to formation in the Christian faith because worship attendance is down, and therefore participation in church life, education, and activities is likewise down. And then a fourth factor, driving force, increasing diversity and pluralism in American society. American society reflects a growing diversity of ethnic cultures and nationalities and their traditions, customs, foods, and languages, and also a growing diversity of religious traditions from the East and the West. Pluralism creates both richness and tensions. A good example for me is to show pluralism and diversity is that in my neighborhood, I live in Cordova, and in my neighborhood, not far from me, is a farmer's market. And I love going to that farmer's market because in that farmer's market, you can get almost anybody's food from almost all kinds of cultures. And if you're interested in certain cultural types, have certain cultural taste, you can find them in that store. But that a few years ago, we would not find such a store. But now, because of the increasing diversity and pluralism in American society, that becomes a driving force. And then the next one is individualism and the increasing influence of individualism on Christian identity and community life. When I teach in youth for youth ministry, this becomes a very big piece of the puzzle for me, because this is where we are finding ourselves, how individualism is not only taking place in the larger secular world, but in the church as well, and having an influence not only on community life, but on Christian identity. It means that religious identity is more autonomous and deliberate today, and that religion is less anchored in a sense of belonging. There is a decline in connectedness, a weakening or severing of the social basis of religion in family, marriage, ethnicity, and community. A decline in the perceived necessity of communal or institutional structures as constituents of religious identity. So therefore, we're seeing in many places the decline of denominationalism, people choosing to go to churches that are not affiliated with denominationalism. And at one time, of course, in my lifetime or in my growing up, that I became a CME because my parents were a CME. But now, definitely, that is not my child. One of my children is not a CME. And I'm a CME preacher, pastor, been a member of the CME church all of my life. She grew up in the church. But it's the influence of individualism is having this influence on Christian identity. And then it is the changing patterns of marriage and family life. It appears that one of the reasons for the decline in church participation is that the younger Americans are marrying later, having fewer children, and having them later, all of them, which means that far more younger Americans are single and childless than was true a generation ago, and that the same younger Americans are settling into religious congregations at the same rates as they are not settling into their religious congregations at the rate their parents did. Just what I mentioned earlier. In the 1970s, this was taking place. Religious practice is especially influenced by marrying, settling down, and having children and raising them. Since individuals who marry are more likely to attend religious services than those who delay marriage, the postponement of marriage and childbearing has contributed to the decline in church attendance. Also, there has been a dramatic increase in religiously mixed marriages and partnerships. More than 1 in 4 American adults who are married or living with a partner are in religiously mixed relationships. If people from different Protestant denominational families are included, for example, a marriage between a Methodist and a Lutheran, nearly 4 in 10 marriages are religiously mixed. So changing patterns in marriage and family life. And then the last two, declining family religious socialization. Family religious socialization has always been the foundation for the development of faith, and faith promises and practices in children, and for participation in church life and worship. As Christian Smith observes, teenagers with seriously religious parents are more likely than those without such parents to have been trained in their lives to think, feel, believe, and act as serious religious believers, and that training sticks with them even when they leave home and enter emerging adulthood. Emerging adults who grew up with seriously religious parents are, through socialization, more likely to have internalized their parents' religious worldview, to possess the practical religious know-how needed to live more highly religious lives, and to embody the identity, orientations, and behavioral tendencies towards continuing to practice what they have been taught religiously, according to Smith. Significant indicators, such as religious identification as a Christian, worship attendance, marriages, and baptisms in the church, and changing generation patterns point to a decline in family religious socialization across all denominations. And then this last significant driving force, the increasing impact of digital media and web technologies. I'm teaching a class this semester on youth and young adult faith formation in a digital world. And one of the books that I'm using comes from one of my former colleagues at Memphis Theological Seminary, a very intriguing book, a great book that helps us to understand a little bit more about what's happening with teenagers, with adolescents, when they're looking at screens. His book is entitled Beyond the Screen. Andrew Zersky is the author of that book. And Andrew points out in here in this book that these youth are going to these screens not so much because they're so technologically crazy, as much as they are looking for a sense of connection, a sense of koinonia that he mentions. And he drives home this thesis very hard in his book, a very good book about relationships and about how young people are looking for those relationships. Well, but I'm saying to us that the driving force of the digital media, and what I'm saying here, the digital media and web technologies, is not evil. There is some good to this, some great things that are coming from this. We already know about it because we are all involved in it. Just think about how this pandemic could or could not be handled very well presently if we did not have the digital media and the web technologies. We would not be having this webinar, for instance. Technology and digital media are transforming the ways we live. Globalization and pluralism are driven by this unprecedented technological change. And I have not even mentioned globalization at this point, but globalization is part of the diversity, part of the pluralism that is taking place in this country. And as a result of that, people meet in all kinds of places. In social media, they share their inspirations on YouTube, all their while tweeting to an assortment of friends, groups of people at opposite ends of the continent or around the globe. Don't need to leave their own context in order to meet in real time and in video. So increasing impact of the digital media and web technologies. I don't think I need to say much more than that in that arena. There's some practical ways for us to look at, to expand the scope of faith formation. One of those is making our scope being comprehensive faith formation for everyone, 24/7, 365. This sort of goes back to what I was saying about the web technology and the digital media, is that, and this is what's happening and has been happening, and if it had not been happening prior to the pandemic, and it's happening certainly now. I know in my context it's happening where people are able to be involved in faith formation 24/367. How is that? Because just like has taken place today, what has taken place over the previous weeks in this Sunday seminary, you can go, anyone can go 24/7, 365 back to what was being presented, that was presented by Dr. Hill, Dr. Miner, Dr. Davis, Dr. Turner, whoever has presented, and what I'm doing and what in the future, 24/7, 365. It doesn't have to be in real time. And it can be in all of these different times. So this is what I'm saying about faith formation, making it comprehensive for everyone so that people don't just have to show up on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. for a church school. They can receive church school any time of the week, any time of the day, any time of the year. I've been able, and I sort of call it being forced to, as the in charge of Christian education for the CME Church. One of the things that we did and are doing is providing weekly a Sunday school lesson that I do that's accessible all year long. So this is what I'm saying, comprehensive faith formation for everyone, 24/7, 365. John Roberto talks about, and I'm going to be talking about probably in the most of the rest of the remainder of this time that we have together. He talks about lifelong faith formation network. And that's where I'm going to take us for the most of our time is together. In addressing diverse life tasks, situations, spiritual needs, interest at all ages. and offering a variety of content, programs, activities, resources, guiding individuals and families in discerning spiritual needs, creating personal learning pathways, creating an annual plan for faith growth and learning, incorporates informal and formal training and learning, utilizes a variety of faith formation models, six to name them, six of those: on your own, faith formation model; at home, faith formation model; small groups, faith formation models; large groups, faith formation model; congregational faith formational model; and community and world faith formation models. So the rest of the time that we're together, I'm going to sort of see if we can say a little bit more about those particular practical ways to expand the scope of faith formation, and then we'll be finished with today's time together. I'm trying to find my notes now because I have them in a different place than on the screen. Okay, here we go. Lifelong Faith Formation Network, and in his book on faith formation in the 21st century, blends face-to-face interactive faith formation programs and activities. Blends interactive faith formation programs and activities. Again, you have face-to-face, and then you have just interactive faith formation programs. And one of the things, virtual online faith formation incorporates communities of practice, connect individuals and groups throughout the congregation. Oops, yeah, I lost connection. I saw it. How did that happen? Hold on a second.
Is it your internet?
I don't know why that did that, but we got to get back. Okay. Host disabled. What happened? Somehow we lost the share screen ability.
Oh, wow.
What happened there?
You got somebody that's...
I'm on now, but I lost my sharing screen ability. I don't know what happened there. Okay, I'll move on. I'll do this in a different way. Okay. Well, I'll just talk from my notes. For some reason or another, the share screen went away and it won't come back. So I'll have to use the other way. What I was getting ready to say as I had the screen up was to say that today, in today's environment in our classes, okay, someone says that it showed Nathan as host. Nathan, did I lose my hosting ability? Yeah, I did. What happened?
You should not have lost your hosting capability. I know that when you first began, Dr. Crutchfield, you had your screen shared, and then it stopped when you were getting situated at first. So you've been going without it being shared, and okay. I wondered if you still wanted it that way.
Well, no, what happened is I lost my hosting. I'm not host any longer.
Oh, you're right.
I don't know what happened there. That's why the screen stopped sharing.
Okay, I just added you as a host again, so hopefully it'll work.
Okay, here we go.
I don't know why that happened.
I don't know. Here we go. Sorry about that. I've been talking as though you're seeing what I'm talking about. Okay. And what I was getting ready to say, in our classes this semester, because we've been pushed into online venue, and I have tried to make our online venue look like this in a way. blending face-to-face interactive faith formation programs and activities. And some of that blending that face-to-face interactive faith formation program sometimes comes through videos, sometimes it comes through live face-to-face on the screen. Sometimes, and of course, if you're in a face-to-face situation without having need of technology, it's in the classroom. But being interactive in all of that and blending that and not allowing that, not finding ourselves stagnated by doing one particular way of doing something. But not only then, when we move from the interactive faith formation programs and activities for face-to-face, we also have to blend the interactive faith program formation programs as well. And part of that blending that is that, like for example, on online classes, we have discussion groups, we have reflection time, we have summary papers, we have lectures, we have different things that sort of blends all of that. And what I'm arguing is that in the local church, we have, if we're going to be thinking about 21st century faith formation, we have to do that same kind of blending. We cannot just depend upon doing the same old that we've always done if we're going to be able to reach the people and face these challenges that we have, those factors that I put up earlier that you did not see. Virtual online faith formation, that's another way, incorporates communities of practice, connect individuals and groups throughout the congregation. So designing a lifelong, I wanted to go back to these significant driving forces, the decline, the increase, the decline, the increase, the increase, the changing, things are taking place, decline and increasing, and practical ways to look at faith formation. And I go at the bottom, this last bullet, and underneath it, 6 different bullets, utilizing a variety of faith formation models, 6 faith formation models: on your own, at home, small groups, large groups, congregation, community, and world. And what I argue is that in the local church, that all of these are viable ways of doing faith formation. Sometimes what has happened to us, and I'm using my own context for an example, is that sometimes our context has remained in one model or another and not necessarily spread and seen the variety of opportunities for us. So Roberto suggests this lifelong faith formation network, and what he gives some key features of that. And some of that is forming, first of all, a lifelong formation network. And then prepare a statement of your church's vision and goal in lifelong faith formation. I say this, whether it's, well, we'll stick with faith formation, but I want to say this, is that when I'm talking to people, Christian educators in our local churches, is that one of the things and downsides that I see sometimes is that we don't think far enough out. We don't think far enough. We don't look at the vision, how the church's vision and goal, how that is matching up with our faith formation efforts. And then develop an inventory of your church's current faith formation programs, its activities and resources. Some of them might be outside of the normal, outside of the norm, but develop an inventory of what are your church's current faith formation programs, activities, and resources. Describe the diverse life tasks and situations, along with needs and interests of age groups. Develop a profile of the most important needs. Research people, programs, activities, and resources to address the priority life issues and spiritual needs, and design new initiatives to address spiritual needs. Develop an integrated plan for lifelong faith formation network. Develop online faith formation center for connecting people to each other and to the resources of the lifelong faith formation network. Develop a marketing promotion plan to promote the lifelong faith formation network. Some of these things may not be conducive to our particular location, but may be done some way in partnership with others. One of the things as I read Roberto, and as the more I read him, becomes informative for me as a denominational leader in the area of faith formation, in the area of Christian education, to see how these particular things can help us be connecting people and promoting lifelong faith formation all the way. The whole church faith formation involves intergenerational programs and usage of common themes throughout the church that the church itself is using. And one of the things that I see that is sometimes a downside to our faith formation in churches and Christian education programs is that we oftentimes are so anxious to do age level type things that we lose sight of the need and the importance of intergenerational programs and activities. How we're able to bring children, youth, young adults, emerging adults, and adults together, seniors together in programs and activities, and how we're able to bring those together in order to be able to help us grow in our faith formation as a church. And part of that way we do that, and one of the ways that we can do that is through the usage of common themes. A theme that is used throughout the faith program, faith formation of the church is used throughout, and that becomes the way that we promote faith formation throughout the entire church. And so that leads to this, and this is the last 10 minutes or so. I want to just sort of talk about how those of us who are in positions of leadership, those of us who, and I tend to say that most of us are in that position, is to talk about 6 different ways that John Roberto talks about leadership. He begins by talking about adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership is that kind of leadership that, as it says, adapts. I mean, and I want to read something as soon as I find it in here in my notes. I have a lot of notes. Okay, here we go. Most Christian churches have similar goals for faith formation. Churches want faith formation that helps all ages and generations to grow in their relationship with God, develop a deeper understanding of the Bible and their faith tradition, relate the Christian faith to life today, participate in the life and ministries of the faith community, and to live as disciples of Jesus Christ in their daily life, at home, in their workplace, in the community, and the world. This is sort of the common theme that all of us have as far as faith formation is concerned. The question is, how do we lead people into faith formation in our local churches? And one of those is one of the number one ways is through our leadership. And you see that becoming an adaptive leader, Ronald Heifetz and Mark Lindsay define leadership as the activity of mobilizing people to tackle the toughest problems and do the adaptive work necessary to achieve progress. Leadership would be an easy and safe undertaking if organizations and communities only face problems for which they already knew the solutions. Everyday people have problems for which they do, in fact, have the necessary know-how and procedures. What leadership experts Ronald Heifetz and Marty Lindsay call technical problems. But there are also a whole host of problems that are not amenable to authoritative expertise or standard operating procedures. They cannot be solved by someone who provides answers from on high. Heifetz and Lindsay refer to these problems as adaptive challenges because they require experiments, new discoveries, and adjustments from numerous places in the organization or community. Without learning new ways, changing attitudes, values, and deep-seated behaviors, people cannot make the adaptive leap necessary to thrive in the new environment. The sustainability of real change depends on having the people with the problem internalize the change itself. There, without a doubt, we are facing and have faced and consider, and just think about what, and I go back to this pandemic, is that how we have had to adapt and the adaptive challenges that we have had to face during this pandemic. If churches would have, and many have adapted in their worship, but in my scenario, in my context, I do not see as much adaptation taking place in the areas of faith formation during this pandemic. The adaptive leadership seems not sometimes to be present. And that's the challenge that we have. So the other thing is becoming an innovative leader. Innovative leadership can be defined as people creating value through the implementation of new ideas. The challenge is to meet the unmet religious and spiritual needs of people in our communities. They call out for innovation and leaders who practice innovative processes and skills. In his book, The 10 Faces of Innovation, Tom Kelly describes 10 people-centric tools developed as IDEO, an international design firm that defines some of the innovation roles and teams they can use to express different points of view and create a broader range of innovative solutions. Innovation is all about people. And then I move quickly to talking about the blue ocean. Now, what's blue ocean leader? A blue ocean leader is one that organizes in a way to enter the market. When it comes to defining what blue ocean strategy is, it helps to start by picturing a vast ocean. Most businesses are located in what the authors call a red ocean. The red ocean is jam-packed with other businesses, all offering similar products and services and competing with each other. Blue oceans are the exact opposite. Blue oceans are open and empty with plenty of space to expand and sell where you want. In blue oceans, there is often no competition, or if there is any, it is effectively irrelevant to you because it can't touch you. Here, demand, customers, and growth are yours for the taking. And I look at faith formation as a blue ocean opportunity. There really isn't any competition. There isn't anyone else in there. There's no red ocean there of us doing faith formation because it's in the church. No one else is looking to do that. So we have an opportunity, and we have the opportunities to lead people into faith formation through this blue ocean because we have this great opportunity to do that. And then a change leadership. A change leadership. Becoming a change leader. In their book, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, Chip and Dane Heath, authors and professors, ask why is it so hard to make lasting changes in our companies, in our churches, in our communities, and in our own lives. The primary obstacle, says the Heaths, is the conflict that's built into our brains. Psychologists have discovered that our minds are ruled by two different systems. The rational mind and the emotional mind that compete for control. You know, the rational mind wants a great beach body. The emotional mind wants that Oreo cookie. The rational mind wants to change something at work or at church. The emotional mind loves the comfort that it is in of the existing routine. This tension can doom a change effect, but it can be overcome. Change can come through quickly. They propose a framework that sets out 3 ways to change these happens, and we don't have time to talk about it, but I do recommend to you, this is one of the books that I do recommend to you. It's a great book. I read it several years ago, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And then comes the culturally intelligent leadership. we move in and out of socio-ethnic cultures, generational cultures, and organizational cultures in our daily lives. Numerous other cultural contexts exist in our lives as well, including cultures organized by professional careers, gender-oriented cultures, and cultures characterized by sexual preference and socioeconomic difference. One of the essentials for leadership in the 21st century is the ability to develop cultural intelligence. That is a person's capability to function effectively in situations characterized by cultural diversity, ethnic, religious, generational, and organizational, to name only 4. And then lastly, I mentioned a curator of content. And as that might imply, just like art, one that is designing, one that is leading faith formation in the 21st century is designing the content, curating it, changing it as needs to be. The role of content curators is now being applied to online content. In the near future, experts predict that content on the web will double every 72 hours. So we have to curate that. And I say that because the web has all kinds of information, and it's up to us as curators of that content. We can't take everything that's on the web and say, okay, let's now have this in our faith formation class. No, we have to be curators of it. And part of our leadership is using whatever resources that goes, whether it's books or whether, and I tell my classes, and one of the things that we do is look at curriculum design, and looking at curriculum, just because it shines doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And necessarily because it has a great website doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us. So this leading faith formation in the 21st century. That's what I wanted to lastly share with you. Now our time is getting upon us. I want to take a moment or so, some time, leave a little bit of time to see if there are any questions that are there, any comments, or any response, or any time for any chatting going on. Nathan is here to help me with that.
Yeah, while people are thinking about their question for Dr. Crutchfield, what I was thinking about, Dr. Crutchfield, is you were speaking about how much things are changing, more and more away from church involvement, participation, just anything related to faith formation. That used to be so much more cultural, not to say that it wasn't genuine. For a lot of people, I'm sure it has been both cultural and genuine participation on their part. But, more and more, we're getting away from participation in the church being something that is cultural, so that people feel compelled to do it, just like they feel compelled to shoot fireworks on the 4th of July or have a meal at Thanksgiving, So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about whether how that's a good thing, any good that may come out of this.
Any good out of it. I think it might, Nathan, that some good might come out of it. If we are able to, adapt to, I guess, the real culture in which we do live in. I'm not so sure that I may be answering that properly, but I think that it could if we are adaptive.
Yeah, that the thing is that's so probably right about that is that, in the New Testament, that's what happens. There's so much adaptability,
Yes.
Of course, arguing and all that kind of thing, but adaptability. We do have another question. Why do you think people are moving away from denominations?
Oh, I think it's because of, has to do, I think largely has to do with this thing of individualism. And there are other takes on this, but in large part, children do not feel a sense of loyalty to denominations like they once did because of their parents, and because now of individualism. Everyone is seeking to do what they feel is best for them, and the self becomes more important than the corporate or the community. And so I think that that's part of what happens, what is happening, and why people are moving away from denominations and into non-denominational venues. Because, and then the other factor I say that is that we have become such a large consumer culture that we look for church in the same way, how it's going to fulfill our consumer thirst or hunger. And if it doesn't feel that, if it's not fulfilling our hunger or our thirst, then we move on to some other place, because we're really driven by this consumer idea.
Another question is, do you see emerging adults embracing online church?
I somewhat do. And it's a good question. And I want to say that I sort of see a lot of people in all generations embracing online church for a lot of reasons. And I'm sort of believing, coming out of this pandemic, one of the challenges that the church is going to have is that people will want maybe choices to do come to the building or to do online church. But I'm not so sure if I'm totally convinced if emerging adults are the only ones that would be so pushed towards online church. I think that that's going to be in all generations.
Do you see a difference in churches which have stayed relevant versus those that have not? Or are there societal factors crossing through regardless?
Yeah, I think that, and that word relevant, I think, yeah. I think that there is certainly a difference, and I think relativity, and one of the things, I think one of the places when I think about being relevant, a place that that is attracting and will attract emerging adults and make the church relevant to them, is that how the church is authentic about what it preaches and teaches and what it actually does. And one of those arenas has to do with social justice. And I believe that churches that are involved in social justice are the relevant churches, and not the churches necessarily that have the loud music and all of that. They can have that too, but I think that the relevance comes as far as people are concerned, particularly emerging adults, will have to do with those who are involved in authentic ministry, which includes engaging in social justice.
Okay, that's all the questions that have come through for now, Dr. Crutchfield.
Okay, well, and we're only 1 minute away, so I guess it's time for me to say thank you for your participation today. And on next week, we will continue to talk about faith formation in the 21st century. And as always, the seminary, I'm sure there is being a long time part of the seminary that we invite you to be involved in all of the work and issues and things going on in the seminary, and to participate, if possible, in donating to the seminary as well, as the seminary is continuing to try to be relevant in the 21st century. So thank you again for coming and join us live on this Sunday morning seminary, and tell others to join us next week. Thank you.